If you guys are cooking along, make sure. Uh-oh. My internet connection is unstable. Let's hope that doesn't last. If you guys are cooking along, make sure you preheat your ovens now. You're not going to want to wait for that when the time comes. 450 is what I'm doing, just because I like it to be hot, and it'll make sure that chicken cooks nice and fast. You don't have to worry about it drying out.
Here we go. Hey, Chris, it's just a little after 5. So would you like to take it away, Chef Look?
Yes, please.
Everybody, thanks for coming. Chris has a little announcement. It is Duxelles, by the way.
Thank you. That's good.
Yeah.
Every one of us who knows how to cook really well doesn't mean we're necessarily professionally trained, and so pronunciation can sometimes be difficult, but we get it done. That's what the servers are for. Anyways, guys, welcome to another episode of Chef Look Cooks. I am very excited to make some chicken cordon bleu for you guys today. Chicken cordon bleu is such an amazingly simple recipe. You can do it so many different ways, like depending on how you cut the chicken. When we get into the chicken later, we'll take a look at some other ways you could cut it for different applications. Like you can grill it, for instance, and it works really well. You just have to make sure that you make more of a pocket. I don't know if you guys have gotten chicken lately from the grocery store, but at least at the Stop and Shop, they're like those big thick breasts, which work really good for grilling. And so those, I'll show you when we do it. You make more of like a little pocket as opposed to what we're going to do, which is more of like a roulette. And that's better for baking personally. And I like it. It just looks cooler when you cut into it as well. But we'll go over that when the chicken happens. It's just a really cool, simple recipe. We're going to sort of jazz it up a little bit. We're going to make a mushroom Duxelles. I probably said it wrong again. That's cool. And that's going to go inside and give us like a nice little extra flavor, earthy flavor to go with that beautiful Swiss and ham and chicken. It's just going to be really good. So we're going to start with the Duxelles because we need that to go in the chicken. So we're going to want to cook that immediately. So get your pan. I'm using a nice little shallow pan. Get your pan up to about medium high heat. We're going to start, like I start so many of my recipes, with browning garlic. And so I've cheated yet again and gotten pre-minced garlic, but you can obviously chop up your own. We want like about a tablespoon. I always go way more garlic than I probably should, but so it goes. So put a little bit of olive oil in the pan, just a touch. And then you're gonna add some butter to that as well. That the oil will help to increase the butter smoking point a little bit. We're not gonna get this super hot, but it just means that you won't burn your butter in this first stage where you are trying to brown your garlic. So we're gonna go 3 tablespoons of butter. And while I'm here, actually let me get you set up better. There we go. Now you can see all the fun stuff. I'm also gonna cut my 2 tablespoons for later that we're gonna use for our cream sauce. Oh yeah, before I really start getting into this, let me show you my setup. We always like to start with a little bit of a mise en place, sort of higher raising. Mise en place is one of my favorite kitchen techniques. It means everything in its place. As you can see here, I've got everything I'm gonna need for the meal right in front of me. I've got my stuff for the sauce. I've got my stuff for the Duxelles. I've got my stuff for the actual chicken cordon bleu, and I have it set up in a sort of a left to right situation so that as I go, I know what ingredients go with what dish. If you study your recipe beforehand, setting up your mise en place in this way means you don't necessarily have to look at the recipe all the time. You just know, oh, my stuff in that lane is my stuff for the Duxelles. My stuff in that lane is for the chicken cordon bleu. My stuff in that lane is the stuff for the Dijon sauce. So that helps if you do study beforehand the recipe. By all means, though, use the recipe. You will notice that I probably will change things that are on the recipe as we go here. That's totally just my style. The recipe is going to make a really delicious meal. I just always tend to go a little rogue. So cut up the butter. It's just going to help it melt faster. You can just toss it right in with your oil. Get that melted. Give it a little shaky shake. And that is going to be what we're going to brown our garlic in. So while that heats up, we're going to get our shallots nice and diced. Brunoise, if you will. And so this is something that I've showed you guys a good while ago, but we're going to go over it again because it's a really, really useful technique. And you can do this with onions as well. Pretty much anytime you want your allium to be cut, even anything round, basically, anything that has that round profile, you can do this to cut into small pieces. So you're going to cut off the tip end, keep the root. That's going to help keep your flesh together when you're doing the very small cuts that would normally make it just sort of fall apart. And then go ahead and peel it. Again, you want to cut it right through the middle of the root ball so that you've got some root on both sides, and it'll stay together really nice, which is exactly what we want. Peel it. You don't want anything tough. A lot of times when I'm using onions, I'll sometimes leave one of the thinner layers because I know I'm going to cook it for a really long time. We don't want anything tough in this Duxelles. We want it to be very, very smooth and soft. So if anything looks like it's going to be tough, just get rid of it. You can always just use more shallot. Get some shallot from other places. All right, sweet. So Brunoise, I think, is just French for tiny. I don't think that's actually what it's for, but basically it means tiny cut. And so to do that, we're going to cut up all of these rings and make them small. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to cut here, here, and here, and that's going to cut off these lines. And then we're going to cut here, 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 and that's going to break up this length. And then we're going to slice off the end really, really tiny. We're going to get nice, tiny, tiny little cubes. So when you're cutting like this, you want to make sure you have a nice little curved hand so you keep your fingers out of the way. Put your palm right on it. Don't want to put too much pressure because that will actually work against you. It'll sort of trap your knife in the shallot. You're not cutting all the way through. I don't know if you can see that or not, but you're stopping a little bit before the root. And again, that's to keep it all together. And so I'm going to do my my lateral cuts first, so I don't have a bunch of shallot all over my cutting board while I'm trying to do this very difficult maneuver. And then I'm going to do my my actual dicing. And I can hear my butter starting to go, which is good. That's what we want. And the more times you cut this, the smaller you're going to get. So, if you're looking for a really, really tiny, tiny dice, you can just cut it more times laterally. All right, my butter is looking good. A lot of butter in this dish. Basically, between that and the mushrooms, that's where you get a lot of it. So we're going to go for about, full tablespoon of garlic. Put it right in the butter. Let it start to brown. Oh yeah, baby, smelling good. Turn it up a little bit. And just keep an eye on that. Make sure the garlic doesn't burn. Brown garlic is absolutely delicious. It adds so many layers of flavor. Burnt garlic is absolutely horrible and tastes like, I don't even know. It's one of the worst things in the world. So try not to burn your garlic. There is a very fine line between properly browned garlic and burnt garlic. So try and toe that line and you will be very happy with yourself. So as you can see, I cut them lengthwise. And now I'm just cutting as thin as I can off the end here. And as I cut, they just come off perfectly into little tiny cubes. And that's because of all those cuts we made in preparation. You can save the root end if you want to make like a stock with it. Put it in if you're like cooking some seafood. You can put it in your court bouillon. It's just good flavor. Shallots have so much amazing flavor. We have a really nice compost pile here at my community, so I just throw everything in the compost because I know it'll come back as food later. But if you don't have a compost, feel free to use your root ends for stocks or pretty much anything you want. I mean, you can eat them if you want to. You can roast them. When they get nice and soft, the root is actually totally edible. It's really, really tasty. Lots and lots of vitamins in there. All right, cool. Garlic is sounding good, smelling good. That's what I like to see. Starting to get a little brown, probably right when we're done cutting this. Garlic will be ready to go. And I'm just keeping my fingers curled in here, like that. You want to keep them away so that if you cut down, I got shallots all over my head. If you cut down, you can't cut yourself. Probably not the best example there, but very, very important safety technique. Whenever you're cutting, keep your fingertips out of the way. Oh yeah. You don't have to look, you can pay attention to your pan while you're cutting because you can feel the knife against your fingers. And the biggest safety concern with knife is knowing where your knife is. If you know where your knife is, you shouldn't be able to cut yourself with it. Beautiful. All right, so there's our shallots looking pretty good. Take out any big pieces again. And that might even be too much shallots, but I'm gonna go for it because I like shallots and they're gonna get cooked down pretty good. Beautiful. All right, so my garlic's nice and brown, smelling just amazingly fragrant. I'm gonna turn this up a little bit because I'm gonna add some mass to that, and so it's gonna have a temperature drop. So I wanna counteract that by turning up my heat, but make sure to pay attention to your temperature and turn it down again if you need to. Just put all those shallots in there. Absolutely beautiful. Oh, it smells even better now. Shallots and garlic, that is a meal. You can just eat this. Just put this on toast. Who needs mushrooms? All right, cool. I've got my nice wooden spatula. I love a nice flat tip wooden spatula when I'm working dishes like this that are going to want me to sort of scrape the bottom, make sure they don't stick. It's a lot softer than you'd get with like a metal spatula, so you're not making as much noise. And I just feel like I have more sort of feel. Whew, those are strong. Whew. Getting a little cryy. Nice. So you can tell they might have maybe have been stored for a little too long, but that is kind of what it is. We're getting towards the end of storage season and into growing season. So some of our onions might not be the sweetest that they have ever been, but they should all be very tasty. All right, cool. So we're really just trying to get those shallots starting to cook, and it shouldn't take very long because they're really small. I went ahead and I already cut up my mushrooms in a food processor. I actually think I probably pulsed them a little too long. You can see the texture is almost too pasty. You want them to be closer to like these chunks here, and you'll get a better product. These are going to be fine. I mean, the whole point of the Duxelles is you're cooking down the mushrooms into a paste, so we're kind of just accelerating the process here by starting with a more paste-like ingredient. But I definitely think I went too far, and that was partly because I put both of my 8-ounce containers in at once instead of doing them in batches. So if you're going to do that right now, I suggest doing one 8-ounce container at a time, or if you've got a big pound container, doing them separately. So yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and put these in with my shallots. My shallots are getting a little translucent. Basically, you know, they smell sweeter. They're not making me cry anymore, which means they're started to cook and they've started to turn that chemical back into sugars and getting really nice and sweet. So I'm gonna add my mushrooms in. I'm gonna keep that temperature high because again, I'm adding more mass, so that's gonna lower the temperature. And we'll eventually find a nice sort of low temperature that I really like. And this almost looks like ground beef, which is kind of cool. But it'll cook down, it'll get darker as those mushrooms start to release their liquid. And we'll get to something that is just absolutely perfect. Beautiful. Now the mushrooms in there, I'm gonna hit this with a little bit of salt to help those mushrooms release their waters. And go pretty heavy. This is a condiment, so don't be afraid to really just put a lot of salt in there. Yeah, you want it to be super duper flavorful. Oh yeah. Just stir it really nice so you don't have all the shallots at the bottom. Make sure the mushrooms have nice even contact with the pan. And it's gonna smell like raw mushrooms for a little bit. You did grind up all those mushrooms so their gills are all throughout there. That's where a lot of that flavor comes from. So it might not smell super appetizing right off the bat, especially if you're not like an absolute fanboy of mushrooms like I am. But trust me, as those mushrooms start to cook down and caramelize with the shallots, that whole dish is going to transform into something else. So good. I've got a nice simmer going. I'm actually going to turn it down now. My temperature is high enough that the mushrooms are cooking. Oh yeah, and the color's starting to change from that sort of darker brown to a lighter brown, and then it'll change back as the Duxelles starts to sort of work down. We're just going to let this cook as long as we can, basically. And while it's cooking, we start the process of getting our chicken ready for the oven. You're basically looking on the Duxelles, you want to make sure you stir it every now and then. And you're basically looking for the liquid to disappear. So those mushrooms are going to immediately release tons and tons of water. They're going to simmer away almost like you're making like a broth or like a tomato sauce or something like that, you know, nice thick simmer. And then eventually that liquid's going to disappear. and they're going to start getting more solid and together. And that's what we're really looking for. That's going to be the perfect storm. I'm gonna get myself a little spoon just to try it, to see how the salt is. It should be cooked enough now where it's at least edible. I mean, raw mushrooms are edible, but they get a lot better once they're cooked. So I'm just tasting it for the salt. It tastes really good, but it's super wet, and you can taste that on your mouth. You know, like you put it in your mouth and it's juicy. It's not sort of smooth like you would want it to be, and that's a good way to sort of test it and see if it's done. All right, beautiful. So let's get our chicken ready. I got the smallest pack of chicken I possibly can, and it's still way too much chicken. So, you know, it's what it is. I'm only going to use 2 of these, but, you know, feel free to cook as many as you possibly want. But these things are just like insanely big. Like, look at this chicken. I don't even know how it's so big. We're going to use this one just because it's so crazy. Sweet. I'll put these guys away for now. Okay, cool. So with these big chickens, especially, like I was saying earlier, oh yeah, I meant to mention, we're gonna go a little bit faster maybe than you can keep up with, just because I did sort of jump ahead on that Duxelles. But don't worry, once the chicken goes in the oven, you're gonna have a lot of time to sort of catch up. So don't worry if you get a little bit behind me. As long as you got the recipe, you'll be fine. So what I was saying earlier with these big chickens is one of the cool things you can do for the grill is you can cook this whole thing. And what you want to do is you want to find the outside of the breast. The inside is going to have sort of this cut part here. So you don't want to go after that. You want a nice smooth surface. And you're going to cut a little pocket. You're not going to cut all the way through. You're going to basically cut with your knife right up against the edge. You're going to cut a little pocket. And you're going to shove that pocket full of cheese and ham and maybe some Duxelles or whatever you want. And then you can just sort of fold that back together, and you put that whole thing on the grill, and the inside will steam and get cooked. It's super good. You want to do a lower temperature than if you saw my grill program, you know I cook on the grill at really high temperatures. But if you're doing something like that, where you do want the internal temperature to rise pretty similarly to the external, then you're going to want to use a lower temperature. We're not going to do that today, though. We are going to butterfly these, and then we're going to pound them out. So similar process to what you would do if you were going to cut a pocket, but we're going to cut all the way through. So it's very similar to when you're cutting the shallots, actually. You're going to put your palm on it, fingers out of the way. You're going to sort of put the chicken breast together, get it nice and sort of all together. Everything's nice and thick. You're going to go right through the center like that. And you're going to cut all the way through the other side. And if you want to, once you get your first cut, you can sort of pick it up and do nice long strokes. That'll help you to get it cut up into a nice smaller piece. Oh, I got a little fatty chunk there. I'm just going to cut that off because that's just going to get in the way when we go to roll it later. Beautiful. Give my Duxelles a little stir. Still nice and wet, but it's definitely getting more and more cooked as we go. The color's starting to change a little bit. Oh yeah. It smells entirely different. It doesn't have that fresh mushroom smell anymore. So now I've got 2 nice thinner pieces of chicken. We're going to pound those out, make them even thinner, and that's going to give us a really nice roll. So we're going to do the exact same thing with this one. I'm actually just going to go ahead and cut this flap off right now. I really love this little flap. It's got a lot of fat in it. It almost is like a mini chicken thigh. Absolutely delicious. Save that for later. You know, put it in breakfast burrito or something like that. Whatever you want to do. So again, get your chicken together in a nice sort of uniform thickness piece, and then you're going to just put your palm on there, and you're going to cut in about halfway. Nice long stroke, and you can hold it up like this, almost like you're filleting a fish. Nice long stroke all the way through, trying to keep it even. It doesn't matter if you mess it up. You're going to pound this thing out into oblivion, so don't worry about it. You really can't mess it up, would be what I would say if you're worried about messing it up. So I'm just going to wash my knife real quick. Everything that I'm going to cut with this knife is going to be cooked later, so I wouldn't worry too much about sanitizing the knife. But if you're worried about it, go for it. Wash with soap and water. Keep yourself safe. I have dealt a lot with raw chicken. I'm not super afraid of it. Nowadays, especially, there's so many antibiotics and stuff around in the chicken market. Or if you're not buying, you know, like a normal sort of produced chicken, you probably have something that's a lot more local, which again is just not going to have the time to develop sort of bad bacteria. All right, so we're just going to push this back. I got a nice big plastic bag. I like this for pounding out my chicken. I think it's safer. You just don't get chicken all over the place. It's really easy too. You can do 2 at once. So just pop your chicken in the bag. Bam, bam. And just close it up. And then a good smack. I'm using a dowel. I couldn't find my my meat hammer. If you do use a meat hammer, make sure you use the flat side. Otherwise, you will break your bag. And you're just trying to pound this out. You're trying to make it thin, maybe about like a centimeter thickness, just something so you can roll it better. And you're trying to make the shape nice and even. You know, try and hit those edges and make them a little bit more square if you can. Basically, if you just hit it out, you should end up with something really nice. So you want to start in the center, and work yourself to the edge, and then work back to the center and back to the other edge. Get you something nice and smooth. Change it up, go the other way. That looks really nice right there. We'll do this with the other piece as well. This one's going to be worrisome. It's got a little hole in the middle, but that's okay. It's okay if it leaks cheese. I'm not worried about crispy cheese. We're going to make it work. Then start in the center, work your way out towards the edge. You're really just trying to make them as big as you possibly can. Because like realistically, the bigger they are, the more filling you're putting in there. That looks pretty good. Let's go with that. Sweet. So just take them out in the bag, put them back on your board. Yeah, this one, as you can see, kind of fell apart a little bit, which is fine. We'll layer it on top of each other and we'll make it work. A little bit of, as you can see, it's a lot thinner than it was before. Should be perfect, nice and floppy, should be easily rollable. So we'll put our other 2 pieces in there. Go to town on them as well. And if you have smaller pieces of chicken, you might not have had to cut it in half like that. And that is really nice. Usually like an organic chicken breast for sure is gonna be a lot smaller. I just bought the ones that were on sale just because they were on sale. But always, ooh, yeah. Okay, good. So my mushrooms have started to make a different noise now. They're more of a tss than like a blah, 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 blah. That means that my liquid's almost gone. So you want to turn that down to a medium low because we don't want them to burn and stick to the bottom. But that means most of the liquid's gone. So all we're doing right now is we're finishing cooking them. We're starting to concentrate those flavors, and we're finishing getting the rest of that water out because we do want this to be pretty dry when it's done. We don't want to add a lot of extra moisture into this situation. It's just going to cause leaking. The cheese is going to be weird if it has a lot of water to mix with. That is not what we want. So just going to turn the heat down. Nice little stir, get it nice and flat again, and then let that water come off. Beautiful. And you can hear the difference. It goes from like a tomato sauce bubbly to you know, like what a normal stir fry would sound like. Again, start in the middle, work your way out. A little aggression out, you know, whatever kind of aggression you may have. Getting chicken will make you feel a lot better about it. Don't have any aggression, that's totally cool. I commend you for that. I also like to live a life of love. Beautiful. Looking really good. This one's going to be super good. One of your pieces is going to be better than the other one. It's just a matter of how the chicken breast is set up. That top piece is just always going to look better. But the bottom piece is going to taste better. It's got more fat on it. So nice little trade-off. Again, middle, and you can turn your chicken, toss it out a little bit. Just wanted to get it nice and tender, nice and thin, without absolutely destroying the protein and making it come apart. You beat the protein like this too. When you beat the chicken, you're messing up the protein strands, and you're making a lot of loose ends. So when we roll it back up, those loose ends are going to stick together. It's a lot like the process that they use to make deli meat. They beat up the chicken like this, and they add a chemical that really helps to bond it together. But the beating process like this is going to do a very similar thing, so that when we roll this back up, the pieces of chicken that touch that normally wouldn't be part of the same piece are going to sort of fuse together, and that's going to hopefully help us keep all our chicken in there, or sorry, our cheese in there. That looks good. Take these out. Get them ready for rolling. These ones are going to be big. These are some big chicken breasts. And then put the plastic bag in the sink. I like to wash my plastic bags, reuse them as many times as I can. Obviously, do whatever you feel comfortable with, especially since we put chicken in there. You don't have to wash your bags. So we're going to start mushroom Duxelles a little more. It's almost there. Still a little wet, and it's fine. It's going to be a little wet. There's a lot of moisture in mushrooms. You can see it's a lot drier than it was before. There's no like water at the bottom of the pan like there was before. That means we're getting really close. I'm actually going to turn it up just to sort of get this process going. But that's pretty much almost done. It's nice. It's soft. It's pasty. Spreads easily. Used to it being a little bit darker, but that's just because I use baby Bellas. All right, beautiful. So what we're going to do while that finishes off, we're going to get our other stuffings together and our batter. So I've got ham, deli ham, and Swiss. You could use thick cut ham from Easter if you still have it, but this is what I've got. Let's take a peek. That's pretty thick, so I think I'm just going to do one piece per. Should be good. So go ahead and get 4 pieces of ham. And nowadays you can't really get anything less than like a pound of deli meat. So I have way too much, but that's okay. You can always cook this again, or just make some Sammys, whatever you want to do. Ham and Swiss is good in pretty much anything. And then again, check the thickness of your Swiss. That looks pretty good to me. So I'm going to do another 4 pieces of Swiss. I like a lot of Swiss. This is probably too much Swiss for a classic. That's a pretty big one. Usually people use a piece half the size, but I'm going to fold it over and use the whole thing because I love Swiss, and it goes really good with mushrooms. And because we have that extra mushroom in there, we're going to want a little bit more sort of cheesy binder to help keep it all together. Get these guys out of the way. We don't need those anymore. Beautiful. So we got our Swiss ready. We got our ham ready. We are ready to assemble. So now we're just going to get our batter ready, right? So we're gonna make a really quick egg wash here. I'm just going to take 2 eggs. I'm lucky enough to have chickens right now, so I got fresh eggs, fresh from the coop. Go ahead and just crack those. Cracking eggs on the edge of your bowl is a really nice way to open it, but if you crack it on a flat surface, you get a different break. It doesn't break into the egg. It sort of breaks the egg into like a little like Death Star almost. You can crack it open just as easily, but you have a much less chance of breaking the yolk. In this case, we're going to break the yolk. We want to break the yolk, but if you were doing like sunny side up or whatever, it's a really nice technique. Help reduce your mess. We're just going to put a little splash of water in here. This is an egg wash. We don't want it to be super eggy. We just want something that has protein in it, so we can use that protein to bind our chicken clothes. And this is sounding really good. Starting to get that sort of dry sounding cook. It's hard to describe without, any of you who are cooking right now can hopefully hear it as well. It just sounds different. It sounds drier. It sounds like there's less and less water every time. Beautiful. And we want that hot, so I'm just gonna let that keep going until I'm ready to stuff. All right, so just whisk up your eggs, make yourself a nice little egg wash. And what I'm doing here, sometimes people have trouble with stirring, but I'm doing like sort of this motion. And what that's doing is I'm trying not to bring my fork out of the egg. So what's that doing? I'm just getting as much momentum as I can to those eggs without getting them all over the place. Whisking, stirring in general can be very difficult, but if you're having trouble stirring, just think about getting to the bottom of the bowl, scraping along the side, and then bringing that bottom up to the top. And if you keep doing that, you'll find that you can mix the craziest amount of stuff in even small little bowls. All right, so got a nice little egg wash. That's beautiful. And then we're going to make our dry mix, which is just going to be, I got some panko breadcrumbs, which honestly, I think are probably a little too big. The grain size is a little too big. I don't know if I can show it to you. It's panko, right? So you guys are kind of familiar. I that's what I had though, so I'm just gonna use it. We use them for the meatballs not too long ago, and so you can measure it if you want, but I'm just gonna throw some out there. Hit them with a little bit of Parmesan cheese. Parmesan cheese is just going to basically be your salt for this, and it's also going to give it a nice. It's going to make it a little bit easier for it to brown in the oven. You're basically looking for like a 1-to-2 ratio Parmesan to panko, or 1-to-3 depending on how much you like cheese. Both of them are going to make a really great breading, so you can't really go wrong. And I'm going to throw some black pepper in there as well. Again, sorry if this isn't on the recipe. I think it was though. I just really like black pepper with Parmesan cheese. I think they're just a really great combo. And black pepper is also amazing with pretty much every other part of this dish. It's just a fabulous flavor. There's not a lot of things it doesn't go with. It even goes in like sweet desserts. I feel like black pepper is just one of the best spices around. It's actually a berry, not a pepper at all. All the good things in nature are berries. Capers, berries, so good. Well, I guess they're not berries, they're buds, sorry. Szechuan peppercorns, oh my gosh, so good. All right, so this Duxelles looks good and perfect timing. I'm like ready to assemble. Just mix that black pepper in there. Get that nice and good. So I'm just gonna transfer my Duxelles to a little bowl here. And this metal bowl is gonna help it to cool. It's gonna be hot, I know that already. There's no way I'm gonna get around that. But you can see, compared to what it was, like it's more pasty. It's sticking together. You can almost feel it. And it like, see, it just all came out in one piece. That's good. That's what I wanted. That means that those proteins have developed and made a really nice flavor. That stickiness is those proteins sort of being together with a little bit of that sugar from the onions and making almost like a little paste. And we're going to use this pan again later to make our cream sauce. So you can just put it right back on the stove. Make sure your stove's off. Beautiful. And just what you do want this in this bowl is just mix, 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 mix. You'll have a lot of steam coming off of it, and that'll help to cool it down just to the point where we can touch it and get it into this chicken. You can put it in the fridge if you want to. If you don't want to deal with hot Duxelles, you could have made it the night before if you wanted to. But this is what we're going to do to sort of cool it down to the point where we can touch it. And that's it. Beautiful. Put that over there. So it's super hot, which is fine. We'll get our little groove going over there. Awesome. So you got your spoon, which is going to help us to spread that Duxelles, even though it's hot. Got your chicken. We're going to start with this nice one right here. Let's put the sort of skin side as the inside. If you put the skin side on the out, it might look a little bit better, but I think it's going to cook better if we have the cut side on the outside. And we're going to cover, just sort of practice rolling it there. We're going to cover it with breadcrumbs anyways. The protein's going to be more together, so that's the way I'm going to do it. But do it however you like. All right, so you're going to take about a tablespoon of the Duxelles, put it right on your chicken, and just spread it out. Let's make sure you guys can see that. Yeah, you totally can. Cool. Spread, 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 spread. And I'm going to put a little more in there. And again, I'm sure you noticed that I just put my spoon back into the cooked product, even though I was touching raw chicken. That's okay for me. If you're concerned, you can always reheat the Duxelles if you have leftovers, or you can just, use it all right now. But that shouldn't be, you shouldn't have to worry too much about it. So we are going to go cheese and then ham and beautiful. And again, that cheese is too much, but I like that. I think it's going to work out really cool. It's going to melt over the sides a little bit. It's going to get crispy. I love that. So Duxelles, cheese, ham, beautiful, ready to go. Now you're going to want to roll it up. This is the tough part. The first piece is the most important one. You want to get a nice firm grip on your ham and cheese. You're going to want to fold real tight, almost like right in half. And then you're going to sort of pull back towards yourself and fold it real tight again. You're trying to get that chicken to come in contact with the ham on the other side. That's going to get your first sort of seal. And then after that, you should be able to just roll it up. Nice. We're going to have a little bit of extra ham here. I probably should have lined that up a little different, but that's okay. And beautiful. You got a nice little roll. You can see the beautiful texture there. The bottom looks funky, but that's okay. That's going to be our bottom seam. That's going to go down on the pan. It's going to get nice and crispy, and it's going to help seal all that extra stuff that's out there. Is actually going to help seal it all together. So we got our first one. I'm actually going to roll them all, and then I'm going to bread them all. So let's just put this right here. We're going to start our next one. Beautiful. If you have a thin side of your chicken, put that towards you and make that the inside. It's going to make it a little bit easier for you to fit everything in there. So it's looking like I'm doing about 2 tablespoons, honestly, of this Duxelles per breast. That's mostly because these chickens are so dang big. I hope they cook pretty fast. Beautiful. So spread, put it all over the place. And then we're going to go cheese and ham. I'm going to put this a little bit closer to me this time, so I don't have as much spillover. All right, great. And then same deal. You're going to do a nice half fold, and then you're going to sort of pull it back towards you as you do your other fold. That'll hopefully get it really nice and tight. That first fold is the most important one. If your interior is loose, then your whole thing is going to be loose. You're just going to fold it over. If you ever made a really good burrito, you know what I'm doing right now, and you're feeling good about it. Awesome. Beautiful. Give it a nice little press. Get that seam sealed. We'll go on to our next one. Just keep going. Same deal. Duxelles, Swiss, and ham. Beautiful. And it's okay if you get messy. That's what soap and water's for. Cheese, ham, beautiful. You do that same business. Nice fold over. Pull it towards me. Nice and tight roll, tight as you can. Again, it's okay if they leak. Nothing has to be perfect. Get that seam side down. This one's going to be tough. We're going to make it happen though. All right, so let's see. I want the most solid piece away from me so I can kind of fix it. And then we're just going to sort of lay the chicken seam on top of itself. And that should sort of help it fix itself. And it's okay if the dish leaks. It's going to be delicious. And that's really what matters when you're cooking for yourself. If we were doing this in a restaurant, I'd probably like cut all the edges of my chicken and make perfectly square pieces of chicken. And it would be a different experience. But when you're cooking at home, you can do whatever you want. Cheese, ham, beautiful. Same thing, nice tight fold here. Make sure we get that second piece of chicken because this one was in sort of 2 pieces. Pull it towards you a little bit. Just roll, nice and tight. Do your best. It's okay if it looks like a mess. We're going to hopefully sort of cover it up with the breadcrumbs. All right, I'm going to do a quick wash. There's our 4 chicken cordon bleus. Now we just got to basically seal them up and put them in the oven. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with some egg wash. Just sort of roll it all over in there. Make sure you try and hold it together so that seal doesn't come undone when it gets wet. And then right from there, we're going to go into our breadcrumbs right into the center and then use your hand to sort of pat it all over. Make sure you get some nice crumbs everywhere. It's going to add some really nice texture to our dish as well as amazing flavor. Don't be afraid to just get in there and sort of push it in. Beautiful. And then again, seam side down right on a baking sheet. And we're just going to do it again. Try and keep your seam intact the whole time. That water from the or the liquid from the egg wash can sometimes break the protein bonds that you made by pounding it all out, and you can end up with the seal sort of coming undone. So make sure you keep that together until you get your breadcrumbs on there. And beautiful. Pat it all in there. Check your seam. Seam looks good. Seam side down. This feels so much, it just feels so cool. I love egg washing and breading. When I was a kid, this was like one of my favorite things to do. was do all the breading. I'd get my fingers just like full of breadcrumbs like this. And I always wanted to, I don't ever do this at home, but I always wanted to take my fingers, get them like fully breaded and just shove my hand in the fry later and then like have like a fried glove. That's a really bad idea. Don't do it. It's like sort of like that vertigo feeling when you're like on top of a tall building. You're like, I could jump right now, but I'm not gonna. It's a very similar sort of experience. Anyways, put another one back on there. Again, keep that seam down. That seam is going to be what's going to keep all this together once it starts to bake. As long as the seam is on the bottom, the weight of the chicken will keep the whole thing together. And then once it starts to get cooked, those proteins will bond together. And when you take it off of the tray, it should be beautiful and held together nice and well. This one's going to be crazy no matter what. But that's what it is. You know, you're always going to have one of those in the bunch. So just use the rest of that breading that you can. Get it all in there. See if we can fix the seam a little better. There we go. Seam side down. Beautiful. I'm actually going to change the arrangement here. So you want to make sure you have some space between them so they get nice and heated through. Beautiful. All right. So there's our 4 chicken cordon bleu. My oven is preheated. Got them arranged in on the sheet, so there's a nice space in between them on both sides, so they'll get plenty of temperature. We're gonna put it right in the middle rack, throw it all the way into the back of your oven, so it gets nice and hot in there. My oven's always crazy. Whenever I open it, I have to reset the temperature or it just won't reheat itself. And we're gonna set the timer for 20 minutes. Oops, that's not 20 minutes. 20 minutes. Let's go 15 minutes. This thing sometimes can be 50. Just so we can check on it. I always like to check on my food. Beautiful. You can use the breading. You know, you could mix it in the Duxelles and make little dumplings and like fry them in the pan. In fact, I'm probably going to do that later. Let's. Hey, look at me! I got my my side dish ready to go. Mix the eggs and the breadcrumbs and the Duxelles together, and you've got a really nice little dumpling. So just going to do a quick little cleanup here, and then we're going to make our cream sauce, which is going to be really, really simple. If you guys remember, I've done cream sauces before. This is basically just a simple bechamel. Bechamel is a really, really nice, versatile sauce. It's cream, it's or milk in this case. It's flour and it's butter. You can add pretty much anything you want to it. Classically, a lot of people add cheese to it for mac and cheese sauce. We're going to add a whole bunch of mustard and Worcestershire to it because that's going to make it really nice and sour and full of flavor, just like a mustard would be. But yeah, it's going to be absolutely delicious. So we're going to turn that there. We're going to use a whisk for this process, so you shouldn't need your spatula. Beautiful. Why do I feel like I'm missing something? Oh yeah, I am. I'm missing my rice wine vinegar. So you can use white wine if you want. I often don't have spare white wine that I don't want to drink. So I usually use rice wine vinegar instead. It's not exactly the same, but for me, it's close enough. So I got 2 tablespoons of butter. And this is how you're going to start a bechamel pretty much every single time. It's 2 tablespoons of butter, 2 tablespoons of flour. That's going to make your roux. Your roux is what's going to thicken your bechamel. It's what's going to take that milk proteins and it's going to bind them together with the starch from the flour. The reason that we are going to cook this is because we don't want it to taste like flour. We want it to taste like mustard. And so we're going to cook the butter and the flour together. That's going to make a roux. There's all sorts of different types of roux. You've got light, dark, chocolate, whatever you want. And they're all used for different things. Like a classic example of something you'd want a dark roux for would be a gumbo. And that roux is one of like the main flavoring ingredients as well as one of the main thickening ingredients. Gumbo is a really cool dish. There's so many different ways to thicken it. You can use filet, which is actually just a powdered leaf. You can use okra. You can use every single dish uses a roux as well, but you don't have to. Don't tell anyone in Louisiana that, they might kill me, but you don't have to use a roux in gumbo. You just have to thicken it somehow. It has to be really flavorful broth that's thickened. And that to me is all that really matters, is use one of those sort of classic thickening ingredients. I feel like there's one other way to thicken it, but I can't remember what it's called. But yeah, gumbo filet is a really cool one. That's the sassafras leaf, I think. Virginia, I'm sure will tell me if I have lied to you or not. I actually forgot to put up my chat. Let's see what we got in the chat. Duxelles, no S. Duxelles. The baking sheet does not need to be greased. The cheese is pretty much the only thing that's going to melt out, and that the Swiss specifically has so much oil in it that it shouldn't stick. The temperature is also really high, so we're going to get almost like a grill level or pan level sear on the bottom because that metal is going to get up to our 450. If we are cooking at a lower temperature like 350, you might want to grease the pan. But between the cheese and the high temperature, we should get a nice sear on the bottom, and so it should just pop right off. You can, oh yeah, absolutely good in an herb omelet. That's an awesome idea. And yeah, you can totally assemble the chicken earlier in the day. You could even like bake it and then reheat it. It's a really, really strong dish because there's so much great stuff, especially with the Duxelles in there. It's a really strong dish with a lot of moisture, so it's going to be hard to sort of make your chicken dry. But yeah, you can totally do pretty much everything the day before and then just throw it in the oven and cook it. It's going to take a little bit longer if your chicken's fridge cold all the way through, but apart from that, it should be good to go. All right, so I start to hear my butter sizzling away, which is good. That's what we want. So we're going to go ahead and put our 2 tablespoons of flour in. So bechamel, 2 tablespoons flour, 2 tablespoons of butter. That's going to be your roux. And then depending on what you're doing, you're going to put a different amount of liquid in there. Today, we're going to use 1 cup of liquid because we want something that's going to be pretty thick. But if you're doing like a mac and cheese, you usually end up doing 2 cups of liquid because you're going to put cheese in there as well. And the cheese is sort of a liquid / solid. It's going to help thicken it. So like a bechamel you'd make mac and cheese would be 2 tablespoons flour, 2 tablespoons butter, 2 cups of milk, 2 cups of cheese. And that's going to get you to almost the same thickness that we're going to try and get today with our mustard sauce. So you just want to sort of whisk everything together. It should smell really good. It should smell like toasted butter, buttered toast, basically, because that's kind of what you're making. That's basically what a roux is a liquid buttered toast. So good. And you don't want to let it burn. If it burns, it's just gonna start over. You know, it's only some butter and flour. It'll be fine. All right, so let's get ourselves a cup. That's fine. Cool. Thought my milk smelled bad, but it didn't. It was good. I'm using a dry cup measure here, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to fill this up. I actually have interior lines here that tell me where 3/4 cups is. These are really nice measuring cups. So I'm going to go to 3/4 cup, and I'm going to fill it up the rest of the way with my vinegar. And that is basically going to be a good approximation to a cup of milk, or a 3/4 cup of milk and a 1/4 cup of white wine. I like rice wine vinegar for this. You could use other vinegars if you want. You don't even have to use vinegar. You could just use all milk. But I really like the reason that the wine is in there, the reason that the vinegar is in there, is both of them are acidic. And because we're only adding a small amount relative to the total sort of sauce of mustard, that acid is going to help bring out that mustard flavor. I'm probably going to add more than 2 tablespoons of mustard. I've got a nice sort of whole grain Dijon here. I'll probably end up with like 4 or 5 tablespoons just because I really, really love mustard. But if you follow the recipe, that acid from the vinegar is going to be really, really essential to helping that mustard flavor pop. But as always, if you don't know what you want to do, just try it. Try the sauce after you put the 2 tablespoons of mustard in there. And if you like the way it tastes, then it's done. If you want more mustard, put more mustard in there. If you want it thinner, put more milk in there. If you want it thicker, then you're a crazy person because it's going to be really thick. But I totally support you. Put more flour and butter in the beginning of the process, and you're going to end up with a thicker sauce. It's totally up to what you want. So my butter is getting nice. My roux is nice and cooked. Started to change color a little bit. It was pretty white when I started, but now it's a little bit darker. And some of the darkness is from the mushrooms that were in there, but that means it's ready to go. So I'm going to put my vinegar and my milk right into there. We're going to add it really slow, and we're going to whisk as we go. And you'll notice that vinegar has probably curdled some of your milk. But once that flour starts to sort of thicken it all together, all of that should just come back together. If it doesn't, I apologize. Beautiful. Oh yeah. You can avoid that curdling by adding them separately instead of putting them together. You can add your milk in first, and then you can add your vinegar, and you'll avoid the curdle entirely that way. But as you can see, it is a little bit curdled, but it's going to smooth out as we put the mustard in there. You can't even tell that it's curdled anymore. Oh, yeah. That's looking so good. You just want to keep it moving. Shake, shake, shake. Whisk, whisk, whisk. Get it nice and thick. Gosh, if my chef could see what I just did, he would probably hit me on the back of the head. When I mean, anyone who's cooking along right now and did what I did probably saw all the curds in their milk and freaked out a little bit. But you know, the heat and the flour really fixes it. It does. You can't even tell anymore. It is just like a nice, beautiful, thick bechamel. It's done. Perfect. And it tastes good right now. It tastes like rice wine vinegar, which for me is one of my favorite flavors. Rice wine vinegar, mirin, sesame oil, and soy sauce is basically my favorite sauce to put on anything. You throw it in a stir fry right before, just equal parts of those four things. You throw it in a stir fry, like right when you're done, and you just sort of turn the heat off and let it sort of simmer a little bit. It starts to stick to all the veggies. Oh, it's so good. So again, mix, 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 whisk, 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 whisk. You want to bring this to a boil, or at least like a simmer, and you'll know when it's done. It's nice and thick. Like this is pretty much done. I'm gonna take it off the heat. We're gonna try it. We're gonna see what it tastes like before we go ahead and put our mustard in there, just to see where we're starting at. Might need some salt. Might need something. The Worcestershire is gonna help a lot for salt, but it's thick too. You can see it's just sticking to the spoon. That's what we want. It's not moving. It just is delicious, thick sauce. Oh, that's good. So it's super, super vinegary, nice and sweet. Oh, man. You could just put that on top, honestly, but we're gonna hook it up. So I'm gonna put it back on the heat. Make sure my heat's nice and low. And we're gonna put some Worcestershire and some mustard in there. We're gonna go for Worcestershire. Worcestershire is really great. It's gonna help sort of bring the flavor of that mushroom Duxelles out. They both have a very similar that umami going on. So adding the Worcestershire in there is going to help our mushrooms that are inside the chicken to really shine. Beautiful. And then we're going to start with the 2 tablespoons of mustard, and we'll probably end up adding more. Oh yeah. And it should just immediately start to smell divine as soon as you put the mustard in there. Hot mustard is, if you like mustard, hot mustard is just such an amazing, amazing smell. Reminds me of just like deli sandwiches, you know, like a really hot Reuben or a Monte Cristo. Oh, Monte Cristos are so good. That's a good thing you could use that ham for. I mean, really, chicken Cordon Bleu is kind of like a Monte Cristo packet, you know, it's got the ham, chicken instead of turkey. Man, I love Monte Cristos. I didn't even think about that till then. We're basically making a Monte Cristo tonight. Fabulous breakfast dish if you never had them before. It's 2 pieces of French toast, and then you use those French toast pieces to make a sandwich that is ham, turkey, and Swiss. You can use other cheeses, you can use other meats, but generally, for me, it's ham, turkey, Swiss. So our sauce is going to be a little thinner now that we added the Worcestershire and the mustard. It might actually run a little bit, which is good. We want that. We want it to sort of run over the top of the chicken when we pour it over it. But this is just 2 tablespoons of mustard. We're going to give it a quick try. It smells really good. It's thick. It's tasty. Definitely wants more mustard. I'm just going to go 1 more tablespoon. It's actually pretty good. I'm actually going to put a little salt in there too. I don't want any more Worcestershire because then it'll taste like Worcestershire instead of mustard. But I do want a little more salt just to counteract some of that cream. Delicious. Beautiful, our time's looking good. My timer's about to go off. So we got this sauce done in about 15 minutes, which is not bad. Oh yeah, looking good, nice and together. Yeah, that tastes. Pretty tasty. Not too shabby. I like that right where it is. Tastes a lot like mustard, but it's thicker. It's got that sort of creamy texture. I'm actually gonna hit it with just like a touch more milk. Almost too thick. I thought the mustard was gonna thin it out a little more. Oh yeah, there we go. You want it to run off the spoon when it's done. So nothing wrong with fixing something, making it the way you want it. I wanted it a little thinner, so I added a little more milk in there. I'm just gonna heat it up again so that it stays together. Bring it back to a boil. And you can see now it's running off the spoon where it wasn't before. It was sort of sticking to the spoon. Now it's running off. That's a good sauce. That's what we want. And the taste is better too. Oh yeah, that's what I'm talking about. I'm just gonna go a little touch more salt. Beautiful. That is good to go. Get my thermometer out. So I don't think the chicken's gonna be done, but I'm gonna test it just in case. I've got a nice quick read thermometer. I really like this one. It's digital. Tells you everything you need to know. It is apparently 76 in my house, or 67. Whoopsies. Gotta turn up the heat. Sweet. It's got a nice, the way you can tell a good thermometer is it'll have this little bump at the tip. I don't know if you can see it or not, but it goes from thick to thin. This tip is where you're getting most of your readings from. But that is a very good sign you have a good thermometer. If it's the same size and it tapers to a point, that's probably more of like a medical thermometer or like a room or meat thermometer, like that you'd put in the oven. A good quick read thermometer is going to have that nice little tape, like sort of step down right towards the tip, so you can get a really accurate tip measurement. So let's open this up, check it out, see what our temperature's at. Take the sauce off the heat. We'll probably heat it up again right before we do plating, but we'll see how these chickens are. Just check the question, see if I missed anything. Looks good. All right. My milk go. Oh yeah. Whoops. Okay, let's see what we're looking at. Oh yeah. All right, that looks good. So I'm just gonna give this a little spin. My tops are already starting to get nice and crispy, which is good. I'm gonna do a quick internal temp. Oh, I'm on Celsius. That's not gonna be the right temperature. Whoop. 1 second, guys. Classic. It wouldn't be cooking with the oven here if we didn't set off the fire alarm. All right, so I'm just gonna check two of these are internal temp. It's looking like I'm about 110, which is good. So toss them back into the oven at the back. It was supposed to take 20 minutes, not 15. So we expected that it wasn't gonna be done. Again, I gotta reset my oven every time I open it. And then we're just gonna let's go 7 minutes, see what that looks like. Beautiful. So like I said before, you'll be able to sort of catch up all the chickens in the oven. Now's the time if you haven't, or if you have any questions about the process, ask me some questions. I'm going to start cleaning up, get myself ready for the plating. But yeah, if you have any questions about what we've been doing, now is the time. Otherwise, we were just waiting for that chicken to be done. Oops. Is everyone else excited to eat this? I'm very excited to eat this. It looked really, really good. The chicken hasn't leaked at all yet, which is perfect. That means that our egg wash and our breadcrumbs are doing their job. They're keeping everything in. The bottom looked like it has got nice and brown too. The sides were still kind of pale. They might stay pale. My oven particularly is not the best. It's an electric oven and it's kind of old. So it doesn't really do great always at getting things brown. But the top looked really nice and brown. And as long as the chicken's cooked, you're going to have a really good meal. You want to hit that 165 if you can. 160 is acceptable, but because only if you're going to let it sit, because that carryover cooking should get it to 165. But because you're stuffing chicken, you want to make sure that you get that temperature to 165. Anytime you take a dangerous protein like chicken and you add something else to it, you always want to hit that 165. If you were cooking just chicken by itself, I would say 150, 155 can be a really, really great experience if that chicken is good and something you trust. A sort of medium well chicken is super juicy. It's amazing. It's an experience that everyone should try if they feel safe with it. But as soon as you start mixing things into it and stuffing it, you really want to hit that 165 safe zone, because that's when you get bacteria from different sources mixing together. You can get a perfect storm of danger. So anytime you're mixing proteins or grinding proteins, you always want to hit that 165 just to keep yourself safe. You don't have to. It's your health. You do whatever you want, but that is what's recommended. Anyways, yeah, let's see some questions. What veggies would I serve with this dish? Anything at all. Honestly, if you wanted to, you could roast some broccoli in the oven with it. I think that'd be really good with the mustard sauce as well. I didn't have any side dishes. Yeah, asparagus, especially now that it's springtime. Asparagus is a great thing. Let me get up a little bit. Asparagus is a great thing to use. But for me, I'm just gonna eat it as its own. It's kind of is a dish in and of itself because it's got that mushroom in there as well. But yeah, steamed asparagus would be great. Brussels sprouts would be also good. Things you could roast in the oven with the chicken would be a good call. They're going to add a little bit of moisture, so you might not want to do it if you got an oven like me that's not super strong. But if you got a really strong gas oven or a convection oven that will take the moisture out, then that could be a really good thing to do as well. What else would I put in there? I mean, you could do a salad too, even honestly, with a honey mustard dressing. Just use that same mustard, put a little bit of maple syrup, and some apple cider vinegar, a little bit of olive oil, shake with some salt and pepper. Just throw on some greens. That way you've got kind of two different types of mustard together in the same dish. Would be really good. The Duxelles, you can refrigerate for probably at least a week. Honestly, probably more. It's basically when it's sort of cooked completely. I'll put this up a little bit. When it's cooked completely, it's actually kind of similar to a compound butter, because there is a decent amount of butter in there, and so it lasts for a pretty long time. You've cooked most of the moisture out, which is where bacteria breed. If you don't have a lot of moisture in your food, bacteria is going to have a hard time. That was my oven getting to temperature, not my timer. If you take the moisture out of your food, it's going to have a hard time growing bacteria because bacteria needs moisture to grow. So because that Duxelles is sort of dry, it's going to last a lot longer in your fridge. You can totally freeze it. Once it's pasted like that, you really don't have to worry about sort of its integrity. Freezing will usually mess up the integrity of proteins and such, because the proteins get cut up by ice crystals when they freeze. But something like a Duxelles, where you really aren't worried about it wants to be a paste, you can totally freeze it. The only thing you might have to do is if you freeze it is you might have to cook it a little bit longer, because it will when it freezes, it might condensate some extra moisture into it, which is going to sort of ruin it. So not ruin it, but it will change the texture. So you might want to heat it back up in a pan before you serve it if you do freeze it. All right, beautiful. So just stir your sauce every now and then while you're waiting here, because it will coagulate and get a little funky. Toss it back on the heat. If you've got an electric range, it's really nice because you can just put it right back on your low heat there. Yeah, another thing you could do is you could shave your asparagus real thin and use that same sort of batter we got there to make almost like a little croquette. That could be really tasty too. You can't really go wrong. There's pretty much any vegetable is going to be really good with this. maybe wouldn't do like a slaw or anything, but yeah, you're gonna get good results. Green stuff for sure. Brassica is always good with mustard, considering that they're in the same family basically. What else would be really good? I'm trying to think of like the perfect combination, but I'm not sure. Excuse me. All right, more clean up, get everything back. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Oh yeah, the smell just changed in here, which makes me feel like that chicken might be done. Got ourselves a nice little plate. Oh, timer. Nice. See how we're looking. So again, internal temperature is going to be your big indicator here. You want to hit that 165. Oh yeah. Looking so good. I'm actually going to take them out just so you can see them real quick. They're nice and together. Nothing's gone anywhere. They're getting a little crispy on top. Cheese is melting, I can see. Don't mind me. We got a very, very, very sensitive fire alarm that is right over my head. All right, we're getting there. We're getting there. My electric oven is striking again, not letting me bake as fast as I want to. You know, every time I open my oven, my temperature goes down to like 400. You really want to keep it at 450 if you can, but so it goes. So let's see. So I just went up 30 degrees. I need to go 20 more. So let's do another 5 minutes. Hope that that gets us there. Beautiful. The waiting game continues. Now is the time to, you know, crack, get out a glass and maybe finish that bottle of wine you opened for the mushroom sauce, or crack a beer if you got one. A nice IPA would be great with mustard. Anything you like, really. I'm drinking water, but anything that makes you happy. So yeah, if you were doing like a side, now would be a great time to maybe be sauteing a side. I didn't think I was gonna have time. I thought my chicken was gonna be done right away. So I did not plan a sort of veggie side to cook right now, but now would be a great time. You can maybe pan sear some Brussels sprouts, and then do like a little like balsamic reduction in there or something like that. That could be really good. This would be a good time to sort of prep the rest of your stuff, or just clean up, you know. That's one of my big things, you know. Mise en place is very important to me, but also sort of using my time really efficiently in the kitchen is also, and it sort of follows along the lines of why I use mise en place in the first place, is it's a really good time saver. I don't have to move around a lot while I'm cooking, but trying to plan out what I'm going to do at each stage of the cooking process so that everything can sort of be moving at the same time. You know, the way how I pounded out the chicken while the Duxelles was cooking, and how I made the sauce while the chicken was cooking. Methods like that can be really useful to save time, especially when you're trying to add layers of flavor, because you're adding a lot of time when you're doing things piecemeal like that instead of just throwing everything in the pan. So if you can get that time back by sort of doing an efficient process and keeping yourself busy, you get to eat earlier, which is always nice. Oaky Chardonnay, yes, indeed, that would be absolutely fabulous, and of course would be a perfectly fine wine if it was cheap enough that you could use it in the sauce too. But most of the time, you know, most sort of the rule is to use a wine that you would want to drink when you're cooking with it. But I often find myself with wines that I don't like, and then I'll cook with them because I don't want them to go to waste. It usually ends up being really intense reds, which are really great for braising. So it usually works out fine for me. Coq de vin is a fabulous dish you can do with a whole bottle of wine, some chicken, some nice root vegetables. That's a really, really tasty one. The whole idea behind that is that you take a really old rooster or hen that's done with laying. And so they're very tough, and stringy. You wouldn't want to like cut it up into breast and cook it like we're doing now. So you do a really slow, low braise, and it gets nice and tender. It makes an absolutely delicious dish. Coq de vin. That's a really classic way to use sort of a what would normally sort of just get thrown away on a farm. I take that back. Nobody's throwing away an old chicken on a farm. They're probably using it all, but that's kind of where the idea came from, and was perfected by our wonderful professional chefs. So I'm actually going to keep the knife because I think I want to cut that chicken open when we get it out, just see what it looks like. Actually, might be too hot, but we're going to go for it. All right, we're getting close here. Thanks for bearing with me, guys. Usually there's much more to watch, but my timing tonight was not what it usually is. I did everything a little too fast. Here, what we can do is we'll make a little, we'll pass the time by making our little croquettes here. You can see what they look like. So just mix the egg in with that Duxelles. Put your breadcrumbs in that. Almost going to be like a little meatball. This is always my favorite thing to do as a kid. I take all the liquids and mix them with all the solids and make little croquettes. I was an absolute freak for it. A little more breadcrumbs. All of it. Now, if I'd had some forethought, we could have done this beforehand. We could have baked it. We could have baked it right next to the chicken. But you're gonna end up with sort of, I put the eggs in with the mushroom Duxelles, and then I just put some breadcrumbs in there. So you got this almost like little dough. You can take that, form little croquettes, and just bake them. I'm actually gonna do that right after I take this chicken out. You just bake them right like that. They turn into almost a little meatball, and you crack them open. It's almost like a mushroom falafel kind of. That'll be super tasty. So that's a fun little side you can do. No waste kitchen. I'm a big fan of using every single thing I can possibly get my hands on. So I'm actually gonna just go ahead and do that. So that was our timer. I'm gonna give that just a little bit more, just because I know what the temperature was, and my oven just got back to temperature when that timer went off. So I don't think it's cooked completely. But I'm gonna go ahead and just form these croquettes while I do it. And croquette is kind of I don't know if that's exactly the right term, but basically for me, croquettes, any kind of like dumpling that is a little bit more wet than maybe like a stuffed dumpling. It tends to be sort of the same texture all throughout. You could put a little like piece of Swiss cheese in here, like make a little dimple like that, throw a little piece of Swiss cheese in there, and then form it around it. That'd be also really tasty. There's a lot of different things you can do with this this new dish I just created: mushroom Duxelles croquette leftovers. And you could also just do these. You could do them flat, in little patties like that, and pan fry them. That'd be also really good. Almost like a little mushroom burger. We're just playing around, you should always play with your food. Your parents might have told you, don't play with your food. I will always tell you to play with your food. It is the most fun thing you can do. Get intimate with your food. Learn where it came from. Do things differently. Learn new things about yourself in doing it. It's the way to go. That's how you grow. Play with your food. Awesome. All right, let's check that chicken. I got a feeling we're good. All right. be prepared. I almost guarantee you my my fire alarm's gonna go off again. Oh yeah, baby, that looks good. I see some nice bubbly bits on the sides, which means we probably hit that 180. All the cheese is melted. Or sorry, 165. Sick, we got there. Let's just check the other one. Just check them all. Check at least 2. I told you it was gonna happen. All right. Cool. So I hit 165 in 2 of my breasts, which means I'm going to take them out, let them cool a little bit. Beautiful. And that is what they look like when they're done. See if I can get you a good sort of look at that. So as you can see, you got little crispy bits here where it's sort of the cheese has come out a little bit and it's burnt. That's good. That's what we want to see. It means that it's nice and cooked. The crust got pretty crispy. It's going to get crispier probably in your ovens than it did in mine. But it's just what it is. You know, my oven is old and electric, so it's got problems. But let's see if we can get one of these off of here. And I can show you what the inside looks like, which is really the fun part about this dish. All right, let's see. Let's go for this guy right here. So that's nice. It's super solid, which is a great sign. That means that our rolling was good. It means that our cheese was good. Everything just turned out well. So classically, you wouldn't cut this. You just put the sauce right over the top. But I'm going to cut it because I want you guys to see what the inside looks like. So we're just going to go straight down the center here. A little sawing motion so we don't mess anything up. Beautiful. Look at that, guys. That's what's up. That is super good. You can see the ham, the cheese, the Duxelles, everything in there. What we want. We're just going to set this up sort of like a classic, almost like a sandwich, you know, with like a little sort of one flat down and the other one sort of leaning on it. If we had been smart and cooked our sort of mushroom croquettes before, we could throw one of those on the plate as well. And then we're just going to come in with this sauce right over the top. It is falling down already. That's okay. That's the beauty of cooking at home. You know, the only person you're trying to impress is yourself. So yeah, if you have some like chives or something, here, let's just absolutely drench it. There we go.
Chris, that looks amazing.
I know, I'm really excited to eat it right now.
So good.
Country cooking, it's not going to look perfect. If you wanted to, you could put a lot more time into this. Like I said, you could cut your chicken into nice little square pieces, but honestly, this is going to taste so good. You're not going to care what it looks like, but a little bit of chives on top would be really nice. Or again, that nice like stark green vegetable next to it would also be a really cool experience. So there you go, guys.
That looks so creamy and mushy and wonderful. It makes me think, I thought steamed asparagus would be good, but now I'm thinking something that's crisper.
Yeah, like a really nice, like even like cauliflower, something that you like, a nice roasted veggie that has like those little crispy, or like crisp. If you have a deep fryer, you could deep fry Brussels sprouts and get those little crispy skins. Those also would be good.
True, or even like just nicely barely dressed spinach salad or something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, totally. Something with
that has
nice
crispness. Yeah. That looks fabulous.
Can't really go wrong. Again, I'm just gonna eat it as is because
I don't blame you. It's very nice of you to wait till we're gone because we're all salivating.
But cool, guys. Thanks for sticking with me there. Some electric ovens. What are you gonna do? But I think it turned out really well in the end. Patience always pays off when you're cooking. If you can take that extra time to do it right, take that extra time. And if you can't, that's okay. It's still going to taste good. It's just not going to taste the same. And you can't do anything wrong with that. Beautiful, guys. Well, thank you so much for showing up.
Thank you.
So much fun. I'm really excited for next month. I think we're going to start getting into sort of the theme so far has kind of just been me messing around, but I think as we sort of move forward here into more harvest months, maybe we'll start to do a little bit of a seasonal thing, and we'll try and focus on sort of what's in season that month. So do some research, see what's in season in May, and maybe you'll get an idea of what we're cooking next month. But it's going to be really, really good. I'm very excited for it.
Thank you so much. Thanks for coming, everybody.
Thank you. And so the Trash Panda EPL blog is, I'm no longer posting there, but you guys can still check out the recipe. I am going to put at least this recipe up. So once a month, I'll be putting up our sort of program recipe, and the video will be available on YouTube as soon as I can get some time to put it up. So feel free to check that out, or tell your friends to check it out if you thought I did a good job.
Thank you so much, Chris.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everybody. See you soon.